Abusuya yebebon wibia kwaba shronkoso aba number 1 political channel POG Media so afei ana se waba oba like no subscribe na afei share my share dwumadi no ama afofo nsa atumi aka ensam ekoso my Ghana mo ayen so ya depene se brand no yebem ya bedafo ehunu ne eko ene de eba na de ensam ena ekoso political highway so eye adanwada Wednesday ebra eye suspended Chief Justice get to Torkono having a press conference no obo ne wofa bidi an wotwe se eyade a ne wofa no omomeda no a ne wofa ne yefe no Kwesin Saki na abusuya saa Kwesin Saki a oye Torkono ende Torkono ne wofa ene da Kwesin Saki no saa boni a da Kwesin Saki ne di Ghana ha no enye bone ketua. According to historian Anokye frempon wotwe se da Torkono wofa Kwesin Saki na Torkono bo ne di no ono oye Twitter obitray Nkrumah ema CIA abusuya CIA for promise ne say so timi eyi Nkrumah ema omo no mutimi ku Nkrumah ayade a ombema na president a chese abusuya historian frempon Anokye ene da history we ebre ya wotwe say da Torkono wofa ojeje ne so ne meda no Kwesin Saki no Kwesin Saki ne Twitter abusuya historian frempon waba ababe expose Torkono ene no wofa ne nyina wastopia mu ne kelebusuya enye asem kuma me waste time kra na me person be me akono yakwakotie ensem no mu bi nansa na be kono me show so wonsem kai bia na ore be share a comment section like share dwumadi no ma foforo nsa entumi enkemi me ramase
blah 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 will be that will be appointed in the future may be removed from office, whether appointed in future or present. It will affect them positively. Why will it affect them positively? All along, they take decisions and nobody complains. They take decisions and nobody complains. Today, as we speak, evidence to back it. When it comes to Addo, where she alleges
he said he was her uncle. She stayed there for years, and it was a key, one of the places that were prominent in the planning and the murder of
so
her
she
uncle.
has no evidence to back it. She has no evidence. In fact, where in the history of Ghana, which textbook, which law case has ever brought up the Addo as a place that was used to plan the execution of the judges? Completely, it's not backed by any evidence whatsoever. Again, if you knew, if the Chief Justice in her life, and she's not a young person, she's old enough, she's past 63 or so. So if a person like this, who was old enough in 1981, knew that there was a planning to murder judges at that place, and she took no step and had decided to sit back until today, then she's a very dangerous citizen of this country. Yes, very, very dangerous. You knew all these things when those culprits involved had at all material times denied. And what is so worrisome is that being the Chief Justice of Ghana, every year you preside over the service that is held in honor of the judges. You preside over it. As a judge, you have gone there many times, and as a Chief Justice, you preside over at least twice. And now you come and tell us that you know all that happened and you decided to keep quiet. But I believe that Madame is doing a big injustice to herself. And as my colleague said, there are certain things. You have a family, a husband, and children, and classmates, and church, everything. You don't have to come and do this in public. You see, until she did that, until she did that, I didn't even know that her direct uncle, father's elder brother, was this man who betrayed Nkrumah, Dr. Kwesin Saki, who took money from the CIA, and he was the most trusted confidant of Nkrumah, and told Nkrumah that Nkrumah should travel, there would be no coup, because CIA had promised him to make him the next president of Ghana. That man's niece is this man. Until all this matter, I wouldn't have known. So she should not sleep in those lies. Whether she likes it or not, she will not be the Chief Justice of Ghana forever. You should understand that.
Next slide on our screen, please.
Who's been suspended, Justice Torkono, saying she has no intention of resigning from her position amid the ongoing probe into 3 petitions for her potential impeachment. Justice Torkono acknowledged calls from concerned individuals for her to resign, but says that would only feed into the wrong narratives of people who have concluded that the allegations against her are true. At a news conference in Accra on Wednesday, June 25, yesterday, she said she had received threats from unknown sources demanding that she resigns or face harm.
I've also heard commentaries in the media about how this process was born out of a stated political agenda to remove me and control the judiciary, and that it is a political effort that can only result in an outcome that was decided long before it started. I thank everyone who has engaged in this conversation out of concern for my safety and well-being. Let me assure everybody that I am not seeking to cling to a title or a position. However, as a lawyer of 38 years standing, a judge of 21 years standing, and Chief Justice who has served the rule of law all my working life, in fact since I was 25, it is my onerous duty and obligation to speak up concerning anything that is extremely wrong with the administration of justice in this country. This is what I do every day. The situation I have been confronted with has shown me a model of injustice that I would never have thought possible if I had not been exposed to it. This is why, despite great personal discomfort, I have decided to marshal every effort in law and leadership to answer to this situation.
Okay, and she also questioned what she terms as a disregard for the rule of law in the ongoing inquiry into allegations against her. Says the entire process continues to violate fundamental principles of justice and endangers its hold on the development of Ghana's democracy. In Justice Torkono's opinion, the allegations leveled against her do not border on any of the stated misbehaviors under Article 146 of the Constitution and do not warrant her being investigated for any wrongdoing. She has told the media that her lawyers have filed an application urging the High Court to declare the proceedings of the committee void.
So, the process alone, its effects ripple far beyond me as a person. This process will affect how all Superior Court justices and future Chief Justices may be removed from office. It also affects commissioners and heads of independent constitutional bodies set up to protect the freedom and justice of Ghanaian citizens as guaranteed under the 1992 Constitution. The Constitution expects that only reasons for removing the Chief Justice and public officials as set out in Article 146 will be the reason for duties must affect public sensitive national interest or public order or safety. I realize that in my case, should the public be made aware of the allegations in the petition, they would realize that none of the allegations made border even remotely on matters of national interest or matters of public order or safety, or anything that indicates that I'm unable to perform the functions of my office. An example is an allegation that I failed to retire accountable interest of $14,000 when I traveled. When I did retire that accountable interest 2 days after I returned from my journey, I was given $14,000. I could only spend $4,400, and I returned $9,600 2 days after I returned from Ghana, from my journey. And so I knew that it was necessary that the issues being thrown around as petitions against me needed to get into the public space. It is the violations of law that have forced me to bring these matters out.
We'll get the government reaction to her statements shortly, but let's speak to our panel, joined by Anokye is our lawyer and historian right here. Mr. Frimpong, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
As a lawyer, what do you make of the statements made by the suspended Chief Justice?
Well, as a lawyer, I believe that whatever she came here to say is completely wrong, because the Article 146 she mentioned specifies that in the case of the investigation at the committee level of the Chief Justice, because the position is so sacrosanct, nothing about it should be done in public. It should be in camera. But all that she has insisted on, including what she said yesterday, was that she wanted a public hearing of it. So it means that for your sake, Ghanaians must be prepared to be unconstitutional. For your sake, we must bend a portion of the Constitution. No, I don't think that is proper. Second, I heard her say that whatever has been leveled against her is completely wrong, and gave some instances. I think any time you would want to make such a statement, you don't pick portions of the petition or whatever allegation that has been made against you and make a case out of it. No, you rather read everything from A to Z. Then the people listening to you will have an opportunity of making their minds. You don't just pick one. For example, to do with the finances, that she picked some money and then retired the money. That is just one example you were given. What about the extent of the petition? If it is 30-point petition, 50-point petition, is that what is saying relevant? Second, you should remember that it does not take up to 100% of the entire petition meeting the required standards as having been able to be proved before she will be dismissed. Each one of them can send her packing home. But before I conclude on this point, Kafui, let me make a statement as a lawyer. You see, under the Ghana.
Alright, Ebushia anti Samlamobi, and Ekokutina just say, historian Anokye Frimpong, Ebushia, what me Torkono, and then Wafan naked Ebushia, according to historian Anokye Frimpong, what you say, da Torkono Wafano Boni Din, Quasin Sakino, Yada Daman, or no a traitor. Or betray Nkrumah Ebushia, and some I call Sonadina and Wadena, historian Anokye Frimpong, editor, what you say, Torkono. Ontimi enye Chief Justice forever. Inti da unnecessary press conference na hold in a beya unja non resign. Isan says or resign ha or benefit biya or cotinefia or binyanenso or chumu or somutare na se case no ebubona that benefits nina or beshire busunya papa ne some of the two asono na nsem no ano eden. Timba person be me akoda kwakuti historian Anokye Frimpong ne some of the two aso.
1960 Constitution. Something happened after an attempt on Nkrumah's life in Kulungugu. The whole matter was brought before the Chief Justice, and the Chief Justice exonerated all the the accused persons. You know, and there was one that offended Nkrumah personally, that Tewia Adamafiu, who traveled by Nkrumah's side to Burkina Faso, then Upper Volta. On their return, had deliberately remained in Burkina Faso, and upon hearing that there had been a bomb blast, immediately asked in Ga, did the man die? In the Ga language, did the man die? So Kwame Nkrumah felt that somebody who traveled with him, so that if he had returned with him on that day, would have died. Why did he decide to stay behind in Burkina Faso? 2, when he heard about the president's near death or death, why would you ask a question, did the president die? It means he was part of the conspiracy. But the Chief Justice said that, no. If somebody asks whether the president died or not, doesn't mean he has conspired to kill. He's a human being. He's one of your ministers. So he has a right to find out whether you are dead or not. And Nkrumah summarily dismissed the Chief Justice, which everybody in the world said was wrong. Now, Rollins facing the same imaginary situation that if I were Kwame Nkrumah and then I had somebody like, say, Akuffo trying a similar case, how would I go about it? Look, the 1992 Constitution is only a transitional constitution which should have immediately been amended or repealed by Akuffo and then a real democratic constitution put in place to centralize every constitution made by a military officer, especially one that the military officer is metamorphosing into a civilian president would be, is one that is shown to fit his status. It's as simple as that. And we don't blame him. It is worldwide. So the next properly democratic government that is elected after the 2 term of the military officer, then the states sit down to amend the constitution, which was never done by. So back to my story. What Rollins did was that, how would I find an opportunity to dismiss a chief justice without anybody blaming me? Look, Kafi, when you send an ordinary case to the Supreme Court, we have 5 judges of the Supreme Court sitting on it. How come that if you want to dismiss a whole Chief Justice of Ghana, you say only 2 judges of the Supreme Court and 3 members of the public? The meaning is that the 1992 Constitution has been crafted in a manner that if the executive wants to dismiss the Chief Justice, it becomes so easy as 1 + 1 for a class 1 pupil. And so, any reasonable Chief Justice who sits by and discovers that a petition about him or her has been forwarded to the president, and the president has meticulously followed all the processes up to the extent of setting up a committee to investigate you, please, nobody should tell you that the intention of that government is to dismiss you from office. And a sensible Chief Justice, don't let me put the word sensible, that's harsh. A reasonable Chief Justice should take caution and resign from office. When you resign, nobody knows why you have resigned. Made public. And then number 2, she has served for about 22 years as a judge. You go home with all your entitlements. Luckily for you, judges retire on their salary. So when you retire, when you are on pension, you don't receive pension pay. You receive full pay as a Chief Justice of Ghana till the time that you die. And then finally, when we are listing the number of Chief Justices the country has had, there is no way after a Yebua they will jump you to any person. No. So if people are advising you to resign, they are not people advising you by way of threat. That is not true. It is people who love you and want you to go home with all your entitlements who are advising you. In any case, whatever she's saying here, she knows it is something inadmissible in law because she has no proof to back it. Finally, by her training as a lawyer and as a judge, she knows that we don't publicize things judicial. You don't do that. So the public statement she's making is completely wrong. What you rather do is that if there is any aspect of the trial or investigation which is wrong, the committee sittings, under the same constitution, you have the right to go to the High Court or the Supreme Court, as the case may be, to challenge it or to bring it down. When you come here for public sympathy, at the end of it all, you are only creating work for media people to do. They do it as we are discussing. After here, you go back to the committee sittings. And that will never change their report. But as a prophet, I will tell you that any president who sets up a committee to investigate you intends to dismiss you. And you should take caution and leave office before the report comes out, based on the history of Ghana.
I thank you for your submission, our lawyer, and a prophet now. Yeah, I'm not sure report. Kobe, you're not a lawyer like me.
Thank you.
So I want your unvarnished thoughts on this matter.
I've heard another story that even this woman
her, not this woman.
I said her lordship, right?
Ladyship.
Is it lordship or ladyship?
Ladyship.
Her ladyship already before this administration, the previous ones was also not too kosher with her. And
But we have to be compulsorily implemented by the president.
Okay.
So always under our constitution, similar, the president has no bite in it. It's other people doing it. So when you reach that level, just go away. But the good thing is that there is no right without infringement of right without a remedy. It be use, it be remedium. Wherever there is justice, there is a remedy. Okay. What they are doing is under justice with respect to the constitution.
Yes.
So the remedy is that every breach of an aspect of it can be remedied by the appropriate court. Okay. And the media is not a court that can give you the remedy you want.
Okay.
If they are treating your lawyers as, he says, like the magicians who appeared before Nebuchadnezzar. Where I disagree with her is that in the case of the magicians, one, they didn't know Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and so they didn't know the interpretation. Why do you liken yours today as your lawyer? Because in your case, you know the petition against you, all the charges, and you have even mentioned aspects of them here. So you know. And then two, we all know what the law says. And it is not your lawyers who are going to interpret it. The lawyers are only going to fight for you. So the two are not the same. The two scenarios can never be the same.
No Nebuchadnezzar comparisons here.
No.
She's definitely not Nebuchadnezzar. Far prettier and far kinder.
And the president too is not a Nebuchadnezzar.
I was ready to tell her. Thelma is here. Thelma, how be?
Charlie, cool. The Nebuchadnezzar had to go to, the Bible.
And then go check for the references.
And then ask, our AI friends, like, what did Nebuchadnezzar do? To get the context within which the CJ, suspended CJ, made the comment. But she said lots of other things as well in that press conference, and I just want to walk us through some of the key elements of her presentation to the Ghanaian public yesterday. So she took us through some bit of history, telling us that in all, so these are all exact quotes from the Chief Justice. So I am not saying this is what the CJ said yesterday. She said that in all of Ghana's 68-year history as an independent republic, there has never been a hearing for the removal of the Chief Justice. Unfortunately, every step of the removal process being undertaken against me is being done in a manner that breaks every rule on how justice is delivered in the country. Lawyer, if at any point you want to answer more specifically to any of the slides, but you are free to come in.
The first one.
Okay, the first one that she said.
68 years of constitutional development. You see, a constitution is always a very small book, small, just as one book of the Bible, not as big as the Bible.
All right, Abusian teachers, winning some of course or political higher, such as a historian and Anokye Frimpong, Aba strip naked. Ababe strip a Torkono nekeda, watch say a yadia Torkono wafa, uboni din, a press conference, and I watch say a yadio medano, quizzing saki. Edini quizzing saki dan wafano, or you tweet and a dark quizzing sakino, a betray Nkrumah MRC. Ifua Abusia and Sema historian Anokye Frimpong Prugu no na eseweni ensese kacho. Madam Asenam de Mosia somebody penimikuti Sema ekoso or political highway so POG Media. Madam Ase.